Hi, Shannon here. Welcome to Let's Talk to Animals, the podcast all species can enjoy together. And today, for our inaugural episode of 2025, I want to dive deeper into a topic that has become one of the hallmarks of my animal communication practice, the work I do one-on-one with you, the pet parent. And so this episode represents me taking you behind the scenes, letting you know what it's like to work with a pet parent one-to-one to help welcome your pet back through the joyful reunion of pet reincarnation. So there is an element of frequently asked questions to this podcast episode. There's also an element of my ever evolving understanding of what it's really like and some of the elements that need to be in place when you are seeking that joyful reunion with your pet in spirit through pet reincarnation. So I want to start with talking about pet reincarnation. What does that phrase mean? It means, as with all of us, we get this groovy 3D spacesuit that allows us to navigate in this 3D earth, this physical realm. And fortunately or unfortunately, these spacesuits have a limited shelf life. They have an expiration date. And so when that happens and the body is no longer a comfortable, healthy, safe, or habitable place for the soul to live, the embodied spirit is the soul, then that means that we need to pass out of the physical body and we go back home. We go back to the soul side or the soul dimension or the spirit dimension, however you prefer to regard it. And during that period of time, often there's an opportunity or invitation to return in a new body for a new set of adventures. And so that's what we're talking about. When I talk about pet reincarnation, when I use that phrase, and others may have a different meaning or definition, but when I use that phrase, that's what I'm talking about. A pet has passed out of a physical body that was no longer serving them for whatever reason, or maybe they had a traumatic accident or something happened and they needed to leave their physical body. They go back to the spirit dimension, which is their real home. And then through a series of events, that pet will choose to reincarnate, to come back into a new 3D physical body. So that's what we're starting today. Pet reincarnation. What is it and how does it really work? So the first thing that I want to share with you is that pet reincarnation is part of a soul agreement or a soul contract. Now, what do I mean by that? A soul agreement or a soul contract, and there's many different ways, there's many different phrases that are used to describe it, but that basically refers to the miracle of you and your animal finding one another once you're both in your 3D spacesuits in your physical bodies. And there are cues and signals set up in advance that help you to find one another again. Otherwise, with the millions and millions of humans and millions upon millions of animals in this world, how on earth would we ever cross paths and meet, let alone recognize one another and opt in to spend our lives together? So that's the soul agreement. And what happens on the soul side is that we agree to meet, and there are benefits for both parties to learn and grow in order to do that. And then when we're in our physical bodies, we recognize one another. Sometimes this can feel very mysterious. Sometimes it can feel very familiar, like, I just feel like that's the one for me, or I just feel like I've known you forever, or when our eyes met, I just felt a click. And so that's the soul agreement or the soul contract activating. So the next thing to know about pet reincarnation, especially when the pet is returning again, and there tends to be a lot of anxiety, and I've been through it for 5 times now. So 4 with the same animal and 1 with a different animal. And you can check out some of the other episodes of Let's Talk to Animals if you want to learn more about my experiences of welcoming my reincarnated pets back to me through pet reincarnation. But what you need to know, and what most pet parents really struggle with, is that it's not a linear process. Just like when you and your pet met the first time. With one of my pets, Miss Petal, who's hiding by the computer right now, she's back with me for the 4th time. So it's always felt like a miracle. It's never felt linear or logical. And if she returns to me again, it still won't feel linear or logical. And yet there's a certain logic to it, there's a certain order to pet reincarnation that is just good to keep in mind. Pet reincarnation requires us to be willing to step outside our comfort zone, to learn and grow, to develop our intuitive abilities. We all have them. And so that's the part that so many pet parents can wrestle with. It's like, but how will I know? And what are all the signs? And should it be this breeder or that rescue center? Or what should I do first and next? And we're going to get into that. But you just need to know going in that if you say yes, if you sign up for the adventure, that I call the joyful reunion of pet reincarnation, then you just have to know going in that it's not a logical process and you are going to need to be willing to at least try to tap in maybe to some abilities, maybe to some sensory experiences that perhaps you haven't been open to before. Perhaps you haven't believed in them. Perhaps you have experiences in your past of somebody telling you, oh, you're just not intuitive. Perhaps you've just never thought of yourself that way. Perhaps you just have a lot of grief and anxiety that's blocking you. And so there is a process and an order to it, but it's not a logical process. I've worked with some pet parents who really, really struggle with that, and they really want go to this street corner at 4 p.m. on a Thursday and look for a woman in a brown trench coat. And in my experience, at least, that is not how has unfolded for me and for the pet parents I've worked with who have been successful in reuniting with their soul pets in their new bodies. There are going to be some elements, however, that you absolutely can control. And there is a certain order to it, as I mentioned. And the first step in the process is that the pet is going to need you to ask. They want to know that you want them back. And this is such a beautiful and heartfelt, very personal experience. I've worked with a pet parent this past week who really wants to welcome her soul cat back. And yet her beautiful open heart recognizes how the 3D physical life and being in a body can be challenging, especially for a very evolved soul, such as a soul pet. And so she was struggling a little bit with actually asking her cat to come back because she didn't want her cat to have to struggle in that way or deal with having to get old and die and pass out of the physical body again. And what her cat really wanted to know was just that she really wanted her back. And the cat wasn't worried about getting old or having to pass out of a physical body. She just wanted to know that her person really, 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 with all her heart, wanted her back. And then it was like a heck yes. And that's also because it's not a selfish act to invite your soul pet back. Yes, there are some challenges that come along with having a physical body, and we all go through them. But there are also lots of things that make those struggles more than worth it. And our pets feel the same way. And often our pets also get the chance to learn and grow. They get the chance to be of service to us, and they know about their impact in our lives. And that's why when I went to the pet collective and I said, why do we have this special name for you? Why do we call you our pets, the animals who have decided that they are going to come into their 3D bodies and live in close company with humans? Why do we call you pets? What does that mean? I don't like the dictionary definition for it. So I'd really love to hear it from you. And they told me that we are your partners, your empathic friends, and your teachers. So imagine the joy of being a pet who comes back into a body and truly has the opportunity to really make a difference, to serve, to learn, to uplift the vibration of the planet, to do their good work, to evolve as an empath, as a teacher, a mentor, a guide, to share those intimate, private moments. Yes, even our weird, quirky little ones that nobody else knows about, and to be privy to the inmost life of another being. For our pets, that is well worth any of the issues that may come along with having a physical body to deal with. And so they really want to hear from us. So your soul pet in spirit is waiting for an invitation, especially in this culture. If you think about just dropping by somebody's home, that's nice. That can be a nice surprise. But isn't it just so lovely and loving to feel singled out and invited? It makes you feel so special, so appreciated, so seen and acknowledged and loved to be invited. And so, if that's something that you haven't done yet, perhaps you're listening to this podcast episode and you're curious about pet reincarnation. Maybe this is the first time you're really taking a look at the possibility. Maybe you're still on the fence about whether you even believe it's something that can happen, or maybe you're all in and you're not sure why you feel stalled out. This is where we start. Let your animal know. Let your spirit pet know, I want you to come back with all my heart. I miss you. I love you. Life is just better when you're in it. I can't wait to see you again. And will you please come back to me? That is always where we need to start. So, that part of the process is a little bit logical if you think about it. So, it's not totally not linear. It's logical that your animal is going to want to know, because it does take an effort. It does take some logistical coordination. It does take a heart gift and a real expenditure of energy. And so they really want to know that it will be worth it and that you really, really, really want them back. The second thing that I really want to highlight, and this is one that my pet parent clients can also struggle with sometimes, is that it's not necessarily, there's not a set timeline. And this can be because the animal needs some time in the spirit dimension to replenish, to refill, to reconnect with their soul family on the spirit side, to unpack their life experiences. It can be sometimes because we, the humans, have some moving parts in our lives and we need to get our ducks in a row before we are in a place, a really healthy, open, expansive place to welcome our soul pet back. Sometimes it's for both reasons. And there's also an undeniable grief, what I call a grief storm, that we as humans need to move through, especially because for most of us, we're so up in our heads and we're so cerebral about nearly everything in life that when our pets die, when they transition out of their physical body and we no longer have their body to prove that they're with us, we really struggle to believe they still exist. We struggle to feel their presence. And we're also struggling against this, what I call a firestorm of grief that hits the physical body with all the chemical and hormonal interactions and the cortisol levels that our body is pumping out, and the overnight change in identity when we're really bonded with someone else and suddenly their physical presence is no longer there. It's like everything about our day, everything about our routine, everything about our life is suddenly upended. And it can take a bit of time for this first firestorm of grief to pass. And this is not perhaps the optimal moment to invite our pet back. When this little one came back to me, when she first let me know she was coming back to me, she was a he at the time. You can go back and listen to the episode where I really unpack what happened and exactly how it unfolded. But I was in such a firestorm of grief because my soulbird Pearl's passing was completely, it caught me by surprise. It blindsided me. I just did not see it coming. Even though he was 24, I did not see it coming. And I was absolutely blindsided. And yet, I guess because I have all of this training and I'm a professional animal communicator, that very afternoon, he was able to break through to me and let me know I'm coming back. In fact, what he said was, I'm rushing back. I will be a ladybird this time. My name will be Petal. And he showed me a picture of an all yellow, what we call a Lutino mutation, color mutation, an all yellow bird. And I really unpack those clues and what they meant to me more in the episodes here on Let's Talk to Animals, where I talk specifically about our story. But in most cases, and certainly in the case of the most recent reincarnated pet who's come back to me, and that is Bruce, my beloved rescued box turtle, who came back to me through a soul walk-in into my young box turtle Io, who's 3 years old. Well, I was in so much grief for such a long period of time because Bruce initially, we were separated when he went missing. I was never able to recover him. And so I have been sitting in this place, this kind of limbo space where I just didn't have any sense of grief resolution. And so I never even considered. I thought he was alive and out in the wild, and I did not realize that he had passed into spirit until I got very, very sick not too long ago. And I reached out to him, and that is when he let me know that he had passed to spirit. And within a couple of days, it was very evident that he'd come back through a soul walk-in into little Io's body. And I also share that story in the very last two-parter episode of 2024. So you can go back and find that to learn more about it. But here we've got two very different timelines. And in the same way, in some of the pet parent situations where I'm working with a pet parent one-on-one and we're calling their animal back through the joyful reunion of pet reincarnation, the timeline is fairly immediate. And it's a very quick turnaround. And usually that is because the pet parent's life is relatively stable and they are moving through their firestorm of grief, and they're doing the things that I recommend, the things that grief specialists recommend: getting plenty of movement, getting plenty of water, getting plenty of rest, feeling their emotions as they come up and subside, and riding those waves and being honest and staying connected. And that really helps with this initial firestorm that just needs to run its course. This is part of being in a physical body. And so they're doing all the things, and they're very open to the process itself. And they are also still very connected. And often these are more intuitive souls as well, who are very connected. Not always, but often they are more intuitive. And so they're already open to that internal, that interfacing dialogue with the soul of their pet, who is the real being. And so sometimes we can see a really quick turnaround. In other cases, the animal may say, check back with me in a year. Or I talked with a dog a few days ago who said, not now, but within 3 years, I may be open to it. So there can be an element of timeline involved, depending on where that person is, depending on where that pet is. And often that's where someone like myself, a professional animal communicator and a pet reincarnation specialist, can come in handy, if you will, to enter the conversation and kind of get a little bit of a vibe check, maybe even just a second opinion, especially if you're very intuitive. The woman that I just talked about, whose cat was eager to be invited back, she had already felt intuitively that her cat was open to it. And she just had this deep open heart saying, I want what's best for you. Is this what you want? And so they were in this stalemate of like, the cat was waiting to be invited, and the pet parent was saying, well, I don't want to do that if that's going to place hardship on you or cause you to endure more struggle. And so it was just a little bit of a stalemate. I was able to come in to the mix and help these two really have a productive conversation with one another. It can also be helpful if you're still in that firestorm of grief and you're just not in a position, in a place emotionally, mentally, physically, where you are open, where you can hear it. I was able to hear Pearl right away because I have this skill set in this training. Not everybody does. And not everybody is called to it, although certainly if this is something that you want to learn, you absolutely can. And I love teaching. And I would love to invite you to join in Animal Communication Adventure, which is my signature student program, and Animal Communication Adventure Practice Circle, which is where my students sharpen and improve their skills in a small group environment. So there's that's always available. However, I don't necessarily recommend that you dive into learning animal communication when you're in the full throes of the firestorm of grief either, because you need time. You need some time. You need some self-care. You need some quiet time. You need to move, to drink water, to breathe, get that lymphatic system moving. And then we can visit the topic of what it might look like to invite your animal to reincarnate to you in a new body for a new set of adventures. Another question that pet parents often have for me is the problem of maybe not being in a great situation or a great position to adopt a very young animal. So there's this misconception that the only way that pet reincarnation can happen is if you're bringing a puppy or a foal or a kitten or a baby parrot or a baby turtle. And while not all animal intuitives agree with me on this, I personally have helped other pet re-enter their parents' lives through soul walk-ins, which what that means in my world is that behind the scenes, the soul of the animal whose body is to be inhabited is needed somewhere else or is willing to go somewhere else to vacate, essentially, to allow a new animal's soul to enter. And that is what happened with Io, my box turtle, when Bruce's spirit entered Io's body. And that was really interesting. There's another woman that I helped who had no capacity. She was an older lady and she had some stuff going on and she just didn't have the capacity to care for a young rambunctious puppy. And so she came to me wanting a session, wanting to ask if it would be possible for her beloved soul dog to come back to her in the form of an adult. And if you search back in my blog archives for Chief's story, May I Take Your Order, and Gracie's story, I'm a Pirate Mom, those are the blog post titles, you can learn more about what that looked like in her specific situations. Chief was a beautiful Sherman Shepherd, and that's what he called placing your order. And so I work with many pet parents who need to place their order, whether it's an order for when their pet is going to reincarnate, in what life stage their pet is going to reincarnate, in what size body their pet is going to reincarnate. This can be especially important for pet parents who are calling their soul dogs back, and in certain areas, certain breeds or certain size animals are prohibited. So it can be very important to get these details right so that that joyful reunion can take place. So, having said that, timelines can be fluid. And it's important to keep in mind that if you're listening to this and you're thinking, wow, I would love to have my soul pet come back to me, but I'm about to move, or I'm about to get married. Or I talked with one woman whose dog had passed and she was caring for an infant, and it just wasn't the right moment. Just understand that that is okay. It's absolutely fine. It just helps to be very clear what works for me versus this just really isn't going to be a good situation. So we don't want to ask our soul pet to come back if the conditions are not suitable for us to rekindle our bond. And that brings up another really interesting point that I actually didn't even have on my hit list, but I just want to touch on it, which is even though our soul pet is going to come back to us, and I've also talked about this a little bit, which is probably why I didn't put it on the hit list for this episode, but I've talked about this a little bit in other episodes on pet reincarnation. Pet reincarnation is not the same as pet cloning, and that can really throw us off, especially if this is your first time calling your soul pet back to you in a new body, especially if you don't consider yourself particularly intuitive and you question or doubt or fear that you will not recognize and or act on the signs. It can be very disconcerting when you're looking for a pet who does not look and act exactly like your pet who has passed. And yet it is very rare. Yes, there are stories, absolutely, but it is very rare that your animal will reincarnate into a body and personality and temperament that exactly matches the one they just vacated. Why? Because you are not the same person you were when you originally met. You have learned and grown since then. They are not the same individual they were when the two of you first met. They have learned and grown since then. And nobody comes back into a physical body if they don't have more learning, growing, and serving to do. And what that means is often we need sometimes small tweaks in our temperament or personality, our body, sometimes even our species. Sometimes we need big tweaks. in order to keep learning and growing. And so this should be expected. Even pet cloning often does not deliver an exact duplicate. It is not possible. We are each as unique as our fingerprint or our claw print or our paw print or our nose print or our hoof print or our fin print or our shell imprint. We are each as unique as a snowflake. There is no ability to exactly copy and repeat what has already been created. And so this needs to be expected. You are not looking for something that's such a slam dunk that there's going to be a big red arrow going, this one here. This is a subtle process. And again, it is a process that invites soul level awakening. So, having worked with pet parent clients who are very logical and very analytical and really want that kind of big red arrow and a sign on the pet saying, I am the one that you've been looking for, this process, at least the way that I help and assist pets and their people to find one another, that doesn't tend to work out so well, because it's really an invitation for you to recognize that you are an intuitive soul in a physical body. You have abilities, you have vibes, you have instincts that maybe you're just starting to become aware of. And as your partner, empathic friend, and teacher, one of the reasons that your soul pet would be willing and even eager to come back in a new body is to help you evolve, to help you raise the vibration of the planet and in your own life. Because once you start to realize how intuitive you are and how you've been getting vibes and signals and signs and deep gut knowings all along, so many new possibilities open up. That is why I am constantly telling my students animal communication, if you allow it, can be the hands down best self development program you will ever find. Because the more we clear our own traumas, the more we clear our own wounds, the more we work with our own mind and open and become humble and empty our cup so we can learn and grow, the more we learn and grow, the more powerful we become, the more we recognize what manifesting really is, what it really takes, how to really do it, and we get the proof that it really works. And so, if you're entering the pet reincarnation process and you just want your pet back and you don't want to do any work and you don't want to open up and you don't want to even try to challenge maybe what you've been told about yourself or what you believe about yourself, that I'm not intuitive, I can't do this unless I have step A and A1 and A2 and B1 and B2, it's not going to work well for you. And so I would steer you away from this type of process. This journey of joyful reunion, this is about mutual awakening and truly allowing your pet to be your guide, your teacher, your empathic friend, your partner in growing, evolving, recognizing that when we keep company with an animal, we get about as close to the divine frequency, the universal vibration. This is the highest vibration signal we can tune to, and it will change us if we let it. And so, for those of us who don't want to be changed, and we just want what we want, this process doesn't work so well. But the pet parents who are open to it have some amazing freaking stories. I worked with one pet parent who was calling her soul dog back, and she actually was struggling a little bit with her intuition, but her young daughter was incredibly intuitive. And she would come back to me and say, my daughter had a dream, and this is how our puppy is going to come back to us. And it was so clear that this puppy was going to be able to send very clear signs and signals through her young daughter, who was totally open to it. And I told this mom, I said, you be sure to take your daughter with you when you go visit the litter of puppies. We'd identified a specific breeder, we'd identified a specific litter of puppies. And I said, you be sure to take your daughter because she will know who your puppy is. I'm getting chills even as I say it. And so don't be afraid to invest your energy in asking for other humans to come alongside. If you have a friend who is very intuitive, if you have a partner or a child or a parent or a sibling who's highly intuitive, ask them to partner with you and ask them to shepherd you and help you and vibe check you and guide you into where do my vibes live in my body. And of course, we talk about that inside of animal communication adventure as well. What I call your IOS, your intuitive operating system. We all have one, just like we all have our outer facing senses. We all have our interfacing senses. And that is another reason why learning animal communication and just being exposed to it and being a part of it is such a great self development program, because nobody ever tells us this stuff. We don't learn about our IOS in biology class or psychology class, even. We don't even learn about it in communications class. The most we're ever told is usually, oh, there's verbal communication and nonverbal communication. We don't get much more than that. Why? Why not? We need this stuff, and it allows us to build such beautiful, remarkable, intuitive lives. And so, this is the process. If you are curious, eager even to find out what all these bells and whistles that you've been given can do, are designed to do, were given to you to do, then going through the reincarnation process with a beloved soul pet is a great way to wake up and to open up to all that you're capable of. Now, the next thing I want to talk about, and this can be the tough part too, is that there's a certain part of the journey where someone like me can come alongside you and shepherd you and help you connect with your soul pet and vibe check you and find out some information about when and where and how and who and if and all of those good details that we want and need to know. But there's also a part of the journey where you will be on your own. Now, I am, and forgive if this isn't you, but I am such a Star Wars geek and have been since I was a little girl. And there's this part in the second of the original movies, The Empire Strikes Back, where Luke Skywalker, the budding Jedi, goes to study with Yoda, and then he finds out his friends are in trouble, and Yoda says, if you leave now in the middle of your training and you go to help your friends, I can't help you and you'll be going alone. And that is not said to scare you, but just understand there's a point in every student's development where they need to take their first wobbly steps on their own. And what does that do? It keeps us humble and recognizes there's still a lot more for me to learn. And it also keeps us confident that we have already learned so much. So we always have more to learn, but we've also already learned a lot more than we can recognize. There will be a moment that you will need to make the final decision. And I can even come alongside you and vibe check you all the way up until the moment you say yes, but you say yes on your own. You sign on the dotted line on your own. I do too. We all do. And so, again, for those of us who are more literal and logical and analytical, and I just want to make sure that I'm doing it right, and we are in the habit perhaps of maybe giving our power or authority away to others because we just haven't developed self trust yet, this is the place where we need to start developing self trust. I was in that place for many years myself, just convinced that somebody else would know better than me about just about everything. And the truth is, when it comes to recognizing and committing to your soul pet, there is nobody who's more qualified than you. There's no one else who can fill those shoes. You are the only one who has the qualifications to do it. And so you must be willing to recognize this part for this phase of the journey. I go alone. It's part of your intuitive development. And it can be a little scary, but that is okay. As one of my favorite mentors, Albert Einstein, said, we have two ways to live life. One way is as if nothing is a miracle. The other way is as if everything is a miracle. When I heard that quote, I decided I'm going to choose everything is a miracle. I'm choosing option B. When you are willing, you become willing, no matter how much you're shaking or quaking or anxious or second guessing yourself, when you are willing to step out and walk that part of the path alone and let your yes be yes and let your signature stand for itself. When you point, you say, I want that one, then you are choosing the path of everything in life is a miracle. And what happens next cannot help but unfold in your favor. That is exactly what happened to me with my petal. If you've listened to the story here on Let's Talk to Animals about what happened when it was time for me to say yes to Petal, I still did not know that Petal was a girl. And the DNA test had gotten lost. And that was one of the 4 clues that Pearl had given me for how to recognize him again. I didn't know if this bird was a girl. And the only way to tell at that time was a blood test. And the blood test had gotten lost in the mail. So I had to say yes. I had to put down my money. I had to sign on the dotted line. I went to pick Petal up and I didn't know. Well, not even a week after I said yes to Petal, the results came back and we found out Petal's a girl. So sometimes it doesn't matter how much experience you have, we are going to be challenged because that is the whole point, is to expand us, to grow us. Our pets cannot partner with us. They cannot help us develop our empathy and our intuition and our compassion. They cannot teach and guide us if we are not willing to step outside of our comfort zone and walk a new path. So that is part of this process, at least the way that it has been explained to me from all the animals I've helped and my own soul animals who have reincarnated to me, and at least how I have seen it unfold. I never hit record on one of these episodes with the intention to share, this is the way that it is. No, there are many ways that it can be. And this may not resonate with you, and that is okay. There are many, many paths that lead us to home. But this is the way that works, that has worked for me and works for the pet parents that I've successfully helped, and leaves us so much braver, stronger, wiser, humbler, more grateful, and more connected, not just to our soul pets, but within ourselves than we could have ever dreamed possible. And that is why I continue down this path. And I keep learning and I keep growing and I learn something new and then I get to share it with you. And so if this does resonate with you, then I invite you to head over to animallovelanguages.com/connect, or just hit the little schedule button and let's talk with your soul pet and spirit. We can even talk with your pet before they transition and find out what their plans are. Now, this is something else to keep in mind. Not all pets reincarnate, and there are reasons for that. But I have yet to talk with a soul pet who does not plan to reincarnate and discover there wasn't already another plan in place for a new animal companion for my pet parent client. Often it's a member of their soul pet's soul family, somebody they are specifically sending who is absolutely perfectly placed to guide them and partner with them and love them unconditionally for the next leg of their journey. So if your soul pet shares that they are not planning to reincarnate, and just keep in mind that every animal communication conversation is a snapshot in time. So just because your animal says not now, it doesn't necessarily mean not ever. But I have yet to talk with a soul pet who says, I am not planning to reincarnate, who does not provide 2 things. 1, their reason, and it's always a good one. And 2, a plan that is already in place for a new animal companion for my pet parent client. And often that animal is a member of their soul family or a mentee of theirs who has been hand picked for them with total unconditional love. So there's always going to be good news. there's always a good reason to reach out and have that conversation. Now, finally, even though we've touched on it here earlier, and I've definitely discussed it in other episodes, especially the episodes that feature how my Soulbird Pearl came back to me as Miss Petal, pet parent clients often wonder, well, if this is so intuitive and it's not really a logical or a linear or an analytical process, well, then how on earth am I supposed to find my soul pet again? This is a big wide world out there. There's lots of animals in this world. And what I have learned is that our soul pet will prime the pump, so to speak. We get a little packet of clues. For me, I got 4 very succinct clues that happened boom, 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 boom. I heard immediately, I'm rushing right back to you. I'm going to be a girl bird this time. My name's going to be Petal. And I saw an image of an all yellow cockatiel. Now, Petal here, you can see, is not an all yellow cockatiel. So that really confused me for a while until Petal's breeder sent me a photograph of Petal as a little tiny chick sitting next to her surrogate mom. Well, guess what color her surrogate mom was? Pale all yellow. Looked exactly like the picture that Pearl had sent me. And if you're not familiar, Petal, my little one right here, big little baby right here, was born out of season. And her egg was found. The breeder found her egg and did not know who had laid it. And so she popped the egg under the bum of her most experienced hen. And that hen happened to be the pale yellow Lutino color that Pearl had showed me in that image. So the clues do line up, but they don't always line up in the order that we want them to or in the timeline that we want them to. And that is also part of the process. And so when I work with you, when you schedule a session and you say, I want to talk with my soul pet about coming back to me for a new set of adventures, coming back for a joyful reunion through pet reincarnation, typically this is what we get. I don't get the exact geophysical coordinates of what street corner you're supposed to meet on. I'll get a little packet of clues. Sometimes those clues really line up for you right away, too. And you may even find that somewhere in the back of your mind, somewhere in your gut, you already knew. Sometimes, if you're very new to an intuitively guided life, that may all be a big surprise to you, and that is fine too. And we can have as many sessions as we need to keep you on track. But my role, and I'm just stepping in alongside your soul pet, is also to serve as a partner, empathic friend, and teacher of sorts. I'm your pet's wingman or wingwoman to help guide you back to them again. And I also want to encourage you, especially if you're listening to this and this is just very new to you, but there's something in your heart or in your gut or in your soul that's just resonating and you're thinking, I want to have this experience. I'm going to see if I can have this experience. This is something that maybe those around you don't even believe in it or think it's possible, but there's something in you that's saying, I want to see. I just want to see. Then I also have a free resource for you. It's called the Pet Reincarnation Guide. And I'm going to link it up in this episode in the show notes. So you can check those out and you can opt in. It's free. You just have to enter your email and then my software will pop the little guide right into your email inbox. If you don't see it for any reason, just email me, Shannon@animallovelanguages.com, and you can let me know. But this guide has been developed from all of the sessions that I've done, from my own experiences, to summarize some of the major bullet points that we're talking about in this episode today, and just serve as an anchor point, a point of contemplation for you to consider. Is this something that I would like to experience? Is this something I'd like to ask my soul pet about? And if so, how might I go about it? So please do reach out to me. I always love to hear from you. Tag me on social media. You can find me on Instagram at Love in Feathers and Shells or Animal Love Languages. And also let me know what other questions you have about pet reincarnation, because I can make more episodes like these. I just need to know what you're interested in hearing about. In fact, this episode today came from a listener request. And so you might be next. I look forward to hearing your questions and your insights and your stories and to working with you and your pet. If this is something you'd like to experience, as always, thank you so much for listening. And please do leave a review of Let's Talk to Animals. It really helps our little show get noticed and known and helps me be able to share the miracle of pet reincarnation and animal communication with more pets and their people. And that just makes this a better world. So I am sending you all my love. And I look forward to welcoming you back in 2 weeks for a fresh new episode of Let's Talk to Animals. Okay, all my love. Bye for now.